it looks like Jen Rosati and Dawn Staley and all those folks that Cheryl Reeve, who had a hand in Caitlin Clark not making Team USA last year in the Olympics, the actual committee looks like they may be gone. Gotta remember, the National Basketball Association, the NBA, the commissioner, Adam Silver, he came right out and said, I wouldn't have left Caitlin Clark off that team. And he even said, and several others said, women's basketball really dropped the ball on an opportunity to grow the women's game by leaving Caitlin Clark off that team.
When the NBA commissioner publicly calls out the WNBA's Olympic Selection Committee, you know something major is happening behind the scenes. And what's unfolding right now is nothing short of a complete dismantling of the old guard. The same people who thought leaving the most marketable player in women's basketball off the Olympic roster was a smart move are now facing the consequences of that catastrophic decision. Here's what many of you have been saying for months, and you were absolutely right. This wasn't just about basketball criteria. This was about an outdated system run by people who refused to see what was happening right in front of them. Caitlin Clark didn't just break NCAA records, she fundamentally transformed how people consume women's basketball. And the Olympic Committee looked at that cultural earthquake and said, nope, experience matters more if you believe accountability matters in women's basketball, and that the people making decisions should actually understand the modern game. Hit that like button. It tells us you're ready for this conversation. Let's connect the dots on what actually went down, because the official story never made sense. Jen Rosati, the chair of the selection committee, came out and said the decision was based purely on basketball criteria. Experience was important, playing internationally was important, and popularity and marketability were not factors. Reading between the lines, that statement is basically admitting they ignored the most important element of Olympic basketball in the modern era, growing the game globally. Think about what happened during the Paris Olympics. A fan from South Korea or Japan showed up to a Team USA game holding a Caitlin Clark sign, not a Team USA sign, not an Aja Wilson sign, a Caitlin Clark sign. That moment should have been a wake-up call. International fans weren't there to watch the team that won gold. They were there hoping to see the player who wasn't even on the roster. Team USA looked at that sign and saw dollar signs flashing, because those fans in Asia weren't paying premium prices to watch veterans. They were willing to pay to see Caitlin Clark. And here's the kicker. The committee's excuse about international experience doesn't even hold up under basic scrutiny. Clark played in the FIFA Under-19 tournament, won gold twice, and was named tournament MVP. She had international experience. She had proven she could perform on the global stage. But somehow, that didn't count because it wasn't recent enough, or it wasn't at the senior level, or whatever excuse they needed to justify a decision that was already made. Let's examine what actually happened when Clark entered the WNBA, because this is where the committee's judgment looks even worse. Every time the Fever visited a city, ticket prices exploded. Teams that couldn't fill half their arena suddenly had sellout crowds. The Indiana Fever's opening game versus the Connecticut Sun drew more viewers than NBA playoff games that same weekend. Clark's rookie jersey became the highest-selling jersey in WNBA history, and it wasn't even close. During her debut season, she shattered 62 records. 62. These weren't minor improvements. This was a fundamental shift in how people engaged with women's basketball. Casual fans became die-hard supporters. Arenas that used to echo with empty seats were packed to capacity. Television networks scrambled to add more WNBA games to their schedules. The entire economic model of the league changed because of one player. And the Olympic Committee concluded this athlete wasn't valuable enough for their roster. The backlash was immediate, and it came from everywhere. Basketball insiders saw right through the flimsy explanations. Stephen A. Smith didn't hold back, calling the decision a deliberate attempt to hamstring women's basketball at a critical moment. Four-time Olympic gold medalist Lisa Leslie labeled it the greatest marketing blunder in basketball history. Even people outside the sport recognized this was a historic miscalculation. But here's what you've been picking up on that the mainstream coverage missed. This wasn't just one bad decision. This was a symptom of a broken system. The committee operated like it was still 2004, when women's basketball was struggling for any mainstream attention. They couldn't see that the landscape had completely transformed. Clark wasn't just a talented player. She was a once-in-a-generation opportunity to elevate the entire sport on a global stage. Consider the Olympic opportunity that was wasted. The Olympics are when casual fans tune into sports they normally ignore. It's when new stars are born and when athletes become household names worldwide. The committee had the player who had already proven she could attract those exact viewers, and they purposefully excluded her. They chose roster continuity over cultural impact. They picked familiarity over the future.
Used to be a committee. Dawn Staley, Jennifer Rizzuti, and all of the hooligans associated in picking the USA basketball team. All of the hooligans, Cheryl Reeves included, so full of themselves, so bound by tribalism that they just couldn't look past their own nose. And at the end of the day, look at them now. Look at them now. The same fate as Cheryl Swoops calling those Dallas Wings games. Tell me when I'm telling lies. Remember during the Olympics, the person from either South Korea or Japan, holding up the Caitlin Clark sign? Team USA looked at that gentleman and said, $sign, $sign. These people over there in Japan, these people over there in South Korea, they're not paying for Team USA to come and watch hoop, but they'll pay for Caitlin Clark. In fact, they are so strong about voicing that they'll pay for Caitlin Clark, they'll come to the Olympic game holding a sign that says, you guys remember.
And you know what's wild? Many of you called this months ago. You said there would be consequences. You said the old guard couldn't survive this level of public scrutiny. You predicted heads would roll, and now we're watching it happen in real time. USA Basketball just announced they're completely overhauling their selection process. The committee structure that made the Clark decision is being dismantled. People are being removed from positions of power. This is accountability on a scale women's basketball hasn't seen before. The person taking over tells you everything about where this is headed. Sue Bird, 5-time Olympic gold medalist, 4-time WNBA champion, and arguably the most respected voice in women's basketball, is being named managing director of the women's national team. But here's the critical detail. She's not joining a committee. She's not sharing power with a selection board. She will have direct, individual authority over player selection and coaching decisions. This is the same structure Grant Hill uses for the men's team. One person makes the calls. One person takes the responsibility. No more hiding behind committee votes. No more coaches claiming they took bullets for decisions they didn't actually make. The buck stops with Sue Bird. And if she wants Caitlin Clark on the 2028 Olympic roster, Caitlin Clark will be on that roster. Period. Think about what this means for the future of women's basketball. No more decisions made by people who are more concerned with protecting their own legacies than growing the sport. No more selection processes that prioritize who you know over what you bring to the table. Bird's appointment represents a fundamental shift in how USA Basketball approaches team building. And if you're excited about what this could mean for Caitlin Clark's Olympic future, drop a comment below saying, CC 2028. Let's show USA Basketball that fans are paying attention. Bird's not just a legendary player. She's someone who understands the modern game from every angle. She knows what sells tickets. She knows what expands the audience. And most importantly, she's been one of Caitlin Clark's most vocal supporters from day one. While others were tearing Clark down, questioning her impact, or downplaying her achievements, Bird was out there saying what needed to be said. She called Clark's long distance shooting the cure for the dunk, acknowledging that Clark had found a way to captivate audiences without relying on traditional highlight reel moments. Bird recognized something the old committee couldn't see. Clark broke through barriers that had limited women's basketball for decades. She made people who had never watched a women's game become obsessed fans. She turned casual viewers into people who would schedule their day around fever games. That's not just talent, that's a cultural phenomenon, and Bird understands the difference. Here's where we need to get into some rumor territory, but sources close to USA Basketball suggest the pressure to make changes came from multiple directions. The NBA commissioner publicly criticizing the decision was huge. Adam Silver doesn't typically comment on WNBA personnel matters, but he felt strongly enough about the Clark snub to go on record. That level of criticism from the parent organization carries weight. It signals that people at the highest levels of basketball saw this as an unforgivable mistake. But it wasn't just external pressure. Internal conversations were reportedly heated. Multiple sources are whispering about disagreements within USA Basketball leadership about how the Clark situation was handled. Some board members allegedly pushed for a review of the decision-making process immediately after the backlash began. Others wanted to wait until after the Olympics to assess. The close call in the gold medal game apparently accelerated those discussions. And let's talk about that gold medal game for a second. Team USA barely survived. They came dangerously close to losing on the sport's biggest stage. After the game, the questions started flying. Would having Clark's shooting ability have made the difference in close moments? Would her ability to create offense have given the team more options when things got tight? We're getting into speculation here, but the fact that these questions were even being asked shows how the narrative had shifted. Cheryl Reeve tried to distance herself from the Clark decision after the fact. She wore her Minnesota Lynx gear at press conferences, visually separating her Olympic role from her WNBA identity. She claimed she had minimal input on roster selection and that she took unfair criticism for USA Basketball's choices. But here's what doesn't add up. Reeve was the head coach. She had influence. And when pressed about the decision months later, she admitted that if they had to do it over again, given how Clark was playing, she would be in really high consideration. Reading between the lines, that's not a defense of the original decision. That's an admission that they got it wrong. But notice the language. Really high consideration. Not she would definitely be on the team. Not we made a mistake. Just that she'd be considered more seriously. That level of hedging tells you everything about the mindset that led to this mess. Even when acknowledging an error, there's still resistance to fully owning it. Dawn Staley, and another committee member, had a similar moment. When asked about the decision after having time to reflect, she said Clark is playing head and shoulders above a lot of people now, shooting the ball extremely well. And if she were playing like this at selection time, she would definitely be on the team. Again, notice what's unsaid. She can't quite admit that Clark was already that good during selection. She has to frame it as Clark improved after the decision was made. Fans aren't buying it. The WNBA community is buzzing about how the committee tried to rewrite history. Social media lit up with side-by-side comparisons of Clark's college stats versus her early WNBA performance. The numbers tell a clear story. She was already elite. The committee just chose not to see it because acknowledging it would mean admitting their criteria were wrong. This is why the structural change matters so much. Committees can hide behind collective decision-making. Individual leaders can't. When Sue Bird makes a controversial choice, she'll own it completely. There's no diffusing responsibility across multiple people. That accountability is exactly what this program needs. It means decisions will be made based on what's best for the team and the sport, not what's safest for the decision-makers. Reputations. Bird's appointment also sends a message about what USA Basketball values going forward. They're choosing someone who embraces the modern game, someone who understands that star power and basketball excellence aren't mutually exclusive, someone who won't see Caitlin Clark's popularity as a threat or a complication, but as an asset that makes the entire program stronger. For Clark herself, This changes everything. Her path to the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles just became dramatically clearer. She doesn't have to worry about a committee deciding her fate behind closed doors. She doesn't have to wonder if politics or personal relationships will override her performance. If she keeps playing at her current level, and there's every indication she will only get better, Sue Bird will put her on that team. And here's what makes this even more compelling. The 2028 Olympics are in Los Angeles, home court advantage for Team USA, in a city that knows how to put on a show. Imagine Caitlin Clark playing in front of a packed arena in LA with international fans who have been following her career for years. Imagine the television ratings. Imagine the global attention on women's basketball. That's the opportunity USA Basketball almost threw away. Now they have a chance to get it right. The timing of this announcement isn't coincidental. USA Basketball watched the fallout from the Clark decision. They saw how it damaged the program's reputation. They noticed that the gold medal game was uncomfortably close. They recognized that maintaining the old structure was unsustainable as women's basketball enters its most popular era ever. This restructuring is their acknowledgement that fundamental changes were necessary. But let's be clear about what this really represents. This is karma in action. The people who made the decision to exclude Caitlin Clark are facing consequences. The system that allowed that decision to happen is being dismantled. And the future of USA Basketball is being handed to someone who actually understands what the sport needs to keep growing. That's not just a personnel change, that's justice. If you want to see how this story develops, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on bar, because we're going to be following every development in this saga. USA Basketball's next moves, Sue Bird's first decisions as managing director, and most importantly, Caitlin Clark's journey to the 2028 Olympics. This is history being written in real time, and you're going to want to see how it unfolds. The message is clear. In women's basketball, you can't ignore the future. You can't make decisions based on outdated thinking and expect to survive the consequences. The sport is evolving faster than ever, and the people who can't adapt are being left behind. Sue Bird represents the new era, and if you've been waiting for accountability, for leadership that actually gets it, your moment has arrived. This is just the beginning.